So it's time for the VR Sidebar. It's a special virtual reality sidebar that the Knowledge series has curated this year. This is the second session in that series, Technology in Storytelling for Cinema. We have with us Avinash Changa, founder, CEO of We Make VR. He will take us through the technology and nuances of using VR in storytelling. And he'll present how the technology will shape the future for the films that are going to come, for the filmmaker, producer, and the viewer. Are these simply films, or are these true film experiences? Let's figure that out with Avinash. May I invite you up? So we'll start with the presentation, and after that, I'm going to invite Bhardwaj to please come and carry on the conversation. But first, the presentation.
So, hi everyone, my name is Avinash, and before I get started, I would like to thank the Film Bazaar and the Dutch Culture Institute, and of course Faisal and Miriam for getting me on this stage. Thank you so much, and thank you for organizing this conference. So, it's customary with these kind of presentations that you share a little bit of personal information about yourself. So as you know, my name is Avinash, and as a kid, I wanted to become an astronaut. I wanted to explore new worlds and new civilizations. But when I was 8, 9 years old, very adult, very mature, I kind of realized, hang on, in my lifetime, we're not going to go past the moon or Mars. But with virtual reality, we create these new worlds, and we discover these new worlds on a daily basis. So this, for me, is a dream come true. So today, I'll be talking about what virtual reality is, a couple of its applications, making VR, and a little glimpse into the future of VR, how that will affect cinema industries and other industries, and there's some time for Q&A. So the question that we always get is, what is virtual reality? Well, that's easier to answer with what it's not, because people ask us like, oh, VR, that's like Google Glass, right? Or it's like HoloLens, or it's like Magic Leap, because we saw all these videos online. But that's not the case. These are augmented reality technologies, which means you see the world through transparent glasses and you get a layer of information on top of that. Whereas VR is a completely immersive experience. But one thing that VR also is not is a roller coaster. I mean, this video went viral, and people laugh about this. And yes, it is VR. It's a VR roller coaster. But that gentleman is not having a good time. For him, he's not going to go back to VR, I would think. So what is VR? VR is not a new technology. It's been around for decades. Since the 1950s, NASA has been exploring VR as a means to train astronauts to go out into space. So they've developed lots of technologies over time. But technology is not the key thing. What's more important is how we as humans relate to this. Well, as humans, we have this instinct, this nature to tell stories, to share experiences. If you have an amazing experience, you want to share that with your friends, with your loved ones, which is kind of new. And that technology went from cave paintings to book printing to early cinema. And with early cinema, that's kind of the stage where VR is now. With early cinema, when the Méliès brothers created the first camera, people that were watching that footage had no idea what was going to happen. Oh, that train is going to come out of the screen and kill us, which was, of course, not the case. Cinema went from these big screens to small screens, black and white TVs with mono sound in your home, to color TVs, to bigger color TVs at home, to home cinema systems with Dolby surround setups, all the way up to huge IMAX screens with 64-channel Dolby Atmos sound. Now, why do these screens become bigger over time? And why do we keep adding more and more of these speakers? Well, as a storyteller, you want to immerse your user, your viewer, into your story. So that's what you do. And we've seen that in the cinematic industry. At the same time, VR makes this kind of the most immersive experience that we have available right now, because your viewer is actually inside your film. But again, so we're going for immersion, and that brings me to an interesting quote. I can talk about this for hours, days, weeks, if you let me, but you'll forget most of what I'd say. You can go to college and learn about VR, and you might remember some stuff. But the interesting thing with VR is a proper VR experience talks to the part of your brain where you make memories, where you are actually engaged, so you're involved. And if you involve someone in an experience, it stays with you. Now, my background is beyond me being a gaming enthusiast. is in visual effects. I've been making visual effects with my company Disrupt for the past 15 years. So we do 3D animation and 2D animation. And we know storytelling for brands from that perspective. And since I'm a gamer, I've been trying different VR sets over time, and they were never really good. But VR was kind of the holy grail of video games. Being inside a video game, I mean, that would be a commercially sound product. And they've tried. The big game organizations, Sony, Sega, Nintendo, have all tried over the years, and they didn't succeed for 3 very simple reasons. To get VR to work, you need good display technology, small, lightweight, mass-producible screens with high quality. You need motion tracking, so when you have an image in front of your eyes, that needs to move with you. And you need 3D stereoscopic imaging that is not like what you see in the cinema, but that is more akin to what your eyes do in reality. These technologies didn't work. It made you nauseous, the headsets were really heavy and expensive, and it just didn't scale. A couple of years ago, there was this company called Oculus who said, we are going to deliver on this promise of VR gaming. So they created a headset, a prototype, to try and achieve that. At the same time, beyond gaming, Hollywood gave us a very different picture of what VR is supposed to be. These big contraptions with bodysuits and headsets that would render a really low-quality CGI version of yourself. And we've seen movies like Strange Days, Existence, Johnny Mnemonic, where you see these people interacting with VR environments. And of course, the most common example is The Matrix, I think. Who's seen it? This is yes? A couple of people. All right. So The Matrix is like the ultimate VR experience, but it's science fiction, whereas our reality of VR at the time was gaming related. So we got one of these VR headsets into our office, we tried playing around with it, and we got our graphics to display on these headsets, which is really cool. But it was still a very isolated, single-person video game experience. So we started thinking, we as people are social creatures. You want to share experiences. And what if we can take this beyond gaming and deliver what Hollywood had promised us, that kind of immersive VR experience that feels like real life. So that's what we did. We created technology that allowed us to capture the world as we see it and reproduce that in a natural way. So not as a 360 video per se, but as something that is more akin to what your eyes do in real life. So we did that by a piece of technology, a camera, but the camera is not that exciting. What's more exciting is that we are now venturing into uncharted territory. I finally get to discover my new worlds and civilizations. And that is where it becomes exciting, because why would we do this? How would we do this? Do we tell stories? Do we craft experiences? How does that work? And that led to a lot of partnerships, because we wanted to map out why do VR experiences work or do not work. And that led to partnerships with people like Miriam Volsmeer, who helps us research what works and what doesn't work. In essence, that brings us to what we do as a company. We bring people moments of joy. Because when people wear these headsets, the corners of the mouth go up, they're amazed, they look around, and you give them a moment of happiness almost. And that's not because of gaming, that's because the experience is a lot more profound. And we take this technology beyond gaming and beyond entertainment. We actually apply this to therapy, to healthcare, to elderly care, to tourism, to a lot of experiences that go beyond the obvious markets. And we got some traction because of that. The BBC invited us to do a 6-minute piece on BBC Live to show the world how we can take this technology beyond gaming and beyond entertainment. And we had the opportunity to present to the Dutch King, which was a big honor, and that was fun. But I'm, of course, not objective, so after the presentation, feel free to Google us and see what other people have to say about us. Big question was these headsets. I mean, if we create content in VR, who's going to see it? Where's the market? Well, 2 years ago, there wasn't any, but now there are plenty of headsets, high-end headsets that connect to your computer, that you can buy for your PlayStation or for your Mac or your PC. And everyone has a mobile phone. Since VR technology is based on screens, motion tracking, and high-quality displays that are mass-producible and light, hey, you need a mobile phone. So the mobile phone is now an easy, accessible, mass-producible VR display.
Like this. Let's go. But just add a Samsung Gear VR. And now, you're actually in the game. Whoa, look at the stars. Hey, let me see those for a second. Now you don't just look at the stars, you fly among them.
So again, you have a VR headset, but it's gaming. Then again, you can also use Facebook nowadays or YouTube 360 to explore 360 videos. So it's very accessible. Or you can just download our app, We Share VR, in the App Store and use it on your own phone, even without having one of those cardboard headsets. Now we have these technologies. What do we do with them? Well, the sports, music, and entertainment industries were the first to jump in because they saw commercial viability. Then travel, movie industries, and others followed. Now we're getting to the stage where we need to come up with proper concepts, proper applications that validate this new technology. Because technology on its own doesn't do anything. We need to use it in a way that makes sense. So one of the first things that we did when we created our first camera was we have a little boat. And our office is based in Amsterdam, so we put our camera on this little boat. We took a little trip through the canals of Amsterdam. And back in our office, we would put the headset on these people, and they would look around, and they would smile, they would laugh. They'd be like, oh, I see all these bikes, and I see the water. And after a couple of minutes, they would take off the headset. They would look around again, and they would ask us, well, where's the fan, and where's the heat blower? Well, we didn't have one. Yes, you do. You hit it, because I felt the wind in my face. I felt the heat from the sun. Then we learned that, hang on, if your experience is realistic enough, if you check enough boxes, your brain becomes flexible and starts filling in the blanks, actual physical sensations. That's interesting. So that motivated us to explore. And again, we sought out partnerships with people like Miriam to map that out. Why does that work? Now, other applications are, of course, I mean, we did a lot of travel applications. We traveled the world to capture these things in VR. Music applications, you can be on stage with your favorite artist. You can, as a business model, you can sell virtual tickets. So instead of 40,000 people at a festival, you can sell 4 million tickets. We can even make you fly and make that very believable. We've also done applications for healthcare, so physical therapy. If you cannot afford to go through 30 sessions, you can download an app and be at home and have your personal trainer in your personal gym. Go through all the exercise that you need to do. Let's say you're 80, 85, and you cannot travel anymore. You're not that mobile. Suddenly, the world is your oyster. You can explore again. Or you're stuck in your home because you suffer from agoraphobia. VR offers new ways of treatment that we have not seen before. And we do educational content as well. We just released an award-winning VR app that teaches students how an operating room works, what the surgeon does, what the anesthesiologist and assistant do, without ever having set foot inside an operating room. That makes education for medical purposes very scalable. But in that same sense, if you're a music teacher, that mobile phone in your classroom is very annoying because all these kids are Snapchatting. Suddenly, this mobile phone allows your classroom to play along with the London Symphony Orchestra or the New York Philharmonic. Suddenly, that mobile phone that's so annoying becomes your most powerful educational tool in your classroom. And speaking of classrooms, we have a partnership with Google, with Google's Expedition program, where we go places virtually where a school bus cannot. So we open up the world in terms of museums, in terms of exciting locations, to all these students and school kids across the world. And we've done commercial applications. We've done shows for Tommy Hilfiger, which reached the New York Times, we did something with Gigi Hadid, which went from 0 to 100,000 Facebook views in just 4 hours. So there's something interesting happening in VR. Then we started exploring parallel to this narrative VR. We created an application, or a companion application to a TV series. So the TV series allows you to see a story about a hospital where weird experiments were being done, and the VR experience allowed you to be one of the patients in the hospital. Now, this was an experience that used a static viewpoint from which the story was told. And after that, we moved into a project called Ashes to Ashes, which is being released to Sundance early next year, which told, again, a story, in this case, a story of a grandpa that had passed away. And you see the story from the perspective of the ashes in an urn, in a vase on a table, and families bickering about what to do with these ashes. Now, in this case, we introduced a moving camera, which earlier was considered not to be possible in VR because that would make everyone nauseous. Well, that's not the case anymore. That kind of worked. Then, recently, we released a project for Samsung. It's an educational project where we taught school kids to be on a bike, go from home to school and back again, and navigate all these complex, difficult traffic situations. So the aim was to increase traffic safety, to make these kids aware of what kind of situation they could get in. And in this case, we did not only use a moving camera, we created cinematic interactive experiences. You as a user can influence the outcome of the movie. You can influence if you cycle next to your friends or behind them or in front of them. So it became a lot more evolved. So we went in just this short amount of time from static cameras to moving interactive cinematic experiences, which is exciting because not too long ago, when we started 4 years ago, people considered this not to be possible. So again, we're exploring new territory. Now, getting into making VR, there's a couple of definitions because there's so many terminologies being used in VR. It's actually relatively simple. On the one end of the scale, you've got games. VR gaming, which is what the technology was meant for, which is very interactive, but you've got gaming graphics, so it doesn't feel super realistic. It's getting better, but it's not photoreal. On the other end of the scale, you've got cinematic VR, which is extremely photoreal. You feel that you're there, but in that sense, because it's so real, you have the inclination to walk around and touch objects, which you cannot because it's filmed. So you have realism, but you don't have interactivity. Now, in between, you've got different forms, 180-degree videos, 360-degree videos without being able to look up and down, or you've got spherical videos, so you can look around and up and down, and then you've got 360 by 360 by stereoscopic 3D images, which makes you feel really there. Now, that range, all of that is valid, but both sides are working towards the same middle, a very realistic, interactive experience. And, I mean, we'll get there in the next few years. But the goal for all these makers of technology, of content, is to create immersion. And that's kind of what we as a company focus on. How can we find the best balance between creating an experience, potentially telling a story, but also delivering on the expectations of the user? It all looks very photoreal. Can you act in it as if you are really there? Now we have the technology. How would we make these things? Well, you need concepts, you need to direct, you need to produce, and it's a very different language compared to cinematic productions. So I'll get back to concepts, but interestingly, as a director, you have a couple of challenges that you're not used to. If you're making a film, you generally create a script and a storyboard, and you start sketching your scenes, but in VR, you don't have a frame anymore. So the way you storyboard is very different, and you're used to that frame. Then recently we heard movements and edits don't really work in VR, or cuts. Well, I think by now we've shown that it is possible. We just need to find new ways of editing, new ways of cutting. Your mise-en-scene, the way you lay out your characters, your actors, is really important. And rehearsals. You rehearse way more than with a traditional production. You rehearse as if you are as if you're shooting on very costly film, because by the time the camera is rolling, you generate so much data that you don't want to do take after take after take. So that makes the process very different. A couple of examples for the makers. If you would sketch a storyboard for VR, the first thing you do is you do a top-down sketch. So you look at a room from the top and you lay out where everyone's walking. So if you compare that to a script, you've got your script, and early on, it was very simple. We've got a 360 view, so we see people there, 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 and there. And we just laid it out with a couple of colors, easy. But hang on. We've got a top and bottom image as well. Are we seeing a balcony? Are we standing on top of a staircase? Can we see someone there? Do we need to script that? Where are people going to be? So that is where we were 2 years ago. Now, with our recent production, Ashes, that became a lot more complicated. Every one of these lines represents one actor, their movements through the scene, and their timing cues. So as a director, there's a lot of details to keep track of. So can you direct a scene like this on your own? And as an actor, how do you remember all these cues? So like I said, rehearsals are so crucial to make a proper VR experience. Now, as a producer, this is not fun either, because suddenly you have a 360 canvas. That means that your sets are a lot bigger. So you can shoot on location, which means you don't have to design your set, because if you're outside, everything is already realistically there. But if you're in the studio, you need to basically design every little piece, not just for your frame, but everywhere, because you don't know where the viewer is going to look. And on a location or on a studio, it doesn't matter, you have more work to perform, to take care of. And you need more time to set everything up, you've got less takes, and then there's practical issues. Because we're filming in 360, that means that you can see your lights, your crew, your set. Now in some cases, if we're on a small shoot, sure, we just hide the camera operator and the first AD behind the car. But if you've got a bigger shoot like this, where do you leave everyone? The moment we say action, everyone needs to scramble and hide because you're going to be in the shot otherwise. So just one tip of practical issues that you run into. Then, of course, we need technology to make VR, to capture all this. Now, a couple of years ago, people were trying lots of stuff out, like strapping GoPros to their heads and trying to get this to work. And on the other end of the scale, we had these other companies that were trying to use big professional cameras, Reds and Ariel Lexus and all these things. So you end up using $500,000 worth of cameras to do a single shot. Well, expensive, a lot of risk, and not very mobile or portable. Actually, for that production there, they had to cut off the entire top of the mini car, put the cameras in, film the shot, and recreate the entire top of the car in CGI just to get one scene done. Very costly and very time-consuming. And not that many brands are willing to do that. Now, today, it's a very different market. We've got consumer cameras, really small, $300 to $500 cameras that fit in your hand or in your back pocket. So you can use any of these cameras to shoot a 360 shot and upload those to Facebook or YouTube and create your 360-degree family holiday photos. Yay. Then we've got prosumer cameras, basically high-end GoPros with specific rigs that allow you to do a 360 shot. But there are not really a lot of professional cameras. There's a few. I mean, there's Nokia with the Oso, there's John with the John 1, there's our camera. But again, it's not about these cameras. This technology will evolve. In 2 years, there will be plenty of professional cameras that will take care of capturing the shots that you want. It's more about creating a good idea. But let's say, for argument's sake, right now, you get one of these, any of these cameras, you shoot your footage. What then? Post-production is very different for VR. Because when you capture a 360 image, you've got all these different lenses with all these different amounts of light on each lens and all these different distortions models. So this is not a stitched image. This is the raw output of one of our cameras. As you can see, it doesn't look great. And as you see there's two dancers that are moving across a stitch line. That doesn't look right. I mean, in a VR headset, you see that there's a lot of issues with that image. If we now stitch that properly with our own software and the knowledge that we've developed over the past 4 years, you can put that image together, you can equalize it, the colors look correct, and there's no stitch, no pixel that is in the wrong place. So technology is evolving. But as I've said a couple of times, it's not just about good technology. It's about a good concept, a good idea. So that poses a challenge to makers, to writers, because you need to let go. And Miriam touched on this yesterday. You need to let go of a lot of the rules that you already know. I mean, there's no frame anymore. There's not necessarily a linear storyline, or there's not necessarily the timing that you're used to, doing fast cuts, doing jump cuts. It's very different. What's important to keep in mind that VR is not film. You've got cinema, you've got theater, you've got gaming. VR is I'm not available. VR is kind of a different medium altogether. And as long as you don't realize that, you keep trying to use the rules from cinema into VR, which will not really work. It's a new language altogether. And we're here to explore these new different rules. So here's a little brain exercise of what a scene in VR can do. I was talking about timing, and in terms of clients, we do a lot of work for the ad industry. In the ad industry, we're used to a 30, 40, or 60-second format in which you need to tell your story. Now in VR, the users kind of need a little bit more time to look around and understand where they are. So 15 seconds, 18 seconds, 20 seconds for a single shot is not uncommon. If we would do a 60-second commercial, that means we've got 3 shots to tell our entire experience. Would that work? Well, what we're actually claiming is that in those 60 seconds, you can have over 5 minutes of narrative content. So just by letting go of the linear thinking. So imagine this. You put on the headset, and you look around and you're suddenly in Times Square, New York. So Times Square is a really busy location, lots of lights, buildings. There's a big red staircase, and on this big red staircase, you've got a 50-person big band, and they're playing with brass, and you're hitting the traffic, and you see the big buildings, and you look around, you take it all in, and before you know it, 40 seconds have already passed, and the story's almost over. But then, to your right, you suddenly hear these screeching tires, and you hear a bang, and you look to the right, and you see that a bike messenger and a cab crashed into each other. The last thing you glimpse is that the bike messenger is okay, he's crawling up, the cabbie gets out and is shouting because he's upset and angry. But user don't really know what happened. So we're going to replay this. We're going back to the first second and we're going to replay this film, but now we're going to turn to the right and see what happened there. As we turn to the right, we see a big window behind us, and there's a diner behind us. And behind that window of the diner, there's a really posh-looking couple. but they're having an argument, and argument heats up, and the lady in her long dress and her high heels is upset, gets up, storms out the diner, steps into the street, hails a cab, and the bike messenger just swerves and misses her. We don't really know what happened. We're gonna watch this one more time. Now we realize that across from the street, there's a guy with a big camera and a telelens taking pictures of us. Again, we don't know what happened and why he's doing that. If we had watched this and we had focused on the couple behind us, this might have led to a romantic comedy. Had we focused on the cabbie and the bike messenger, that might have led to an action adventure. Had we focused on the camera guy, we might have discovered that he's not actually taking pictures of us. He was hired by the wife of the guy sitting behind us who she suspected him of having an affair. So suddenly there's all these different lines in these 60 seconds that you can discover by replaying. Now, I'm not saying every story should have replay value. It's just one example of how linear storylines don't necessarily need to work for VR. You can have a lot of different options. Now, what we've seen over the past few years is that we went from really clumsy big headsets to the Gear VR, to mobile phones from Google, and a small cardboard box. So this industry is really evolving fast. So what's going to happen now? As I started out, I said, well, we are, as humans, are social beings, social creatures. So the social aspect of VR is really important. Right now, you can put on a headset, and it's just you. But we want to share these experiences. If you're virtually at a concert on the other side of the world, you want to be there with your friends. You don't want to be there on your own. So that's going to happen. That's what we're working on. Then we're seeing what I started with. We've got HoloLens and augmented reality, and we've got virtual reality. These things are going to come together into mixed reality experiences. And the devices right now are still very heavy, clumsy, warm. They're not comfortable. Deviceless VR, without any technology on your face, I mean, that'll happen in the next 7 years. And tactile feedback, you want to be able to touch stuff. You want to feel that you're opening a door. You want to feel that you're walking through a hallway. But back to social. I mean, a year ago, 2 people could already play a game in VR, which was kind of fun. You could play ping pong. You could throw fireworks at each other. Yay. This year, we saw something different. I was in the US recently. I saw a presentation by Mark Zuckerberg, who bought Oculus for $2 billion, which you probably know. And since they're Facebook, they're a social network, so they have a vision.
He looks so happy.
VR.
That's
I
great.
mean, he's got his ball. It's all good. Hey, I'm getting a call in Facebook Messenger.
Dude, you can actually answer that call in VR. Take a look at your wrist.
Whoa. Hey,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. Why do you look like Justin Timberlake? Anyways, how's Beast doing?
He's great. Here, take a look. He's just hanging out with his ball. He's doing well. But this is crazy. You know, you're dialed into virtual reality right now, and Beast has no idea what's going on.
He usually doesn't.
Yeah, hey, do you mind if I just put you here for a second?
Sure, I'm in clinic, but my next patient's not here yet, so I have a minute.
All right, cool. We'll hang out in virtual reality in between you treating real patients. All right, so, hey, while we're here, do you want to take a quick modern family selfie?
Oh, I have just the tool for that. There you go.
Of course you have a selfie stick.
Of course.
All right, let's do this. Got to get the angle right.
So suddenly, we're taking selfies in VR, and those selfies are mixed between VR, animated space, real-world images, and of course, this is going to be posted in your Facebook timeline instantly. Now, another type of experience that is going to happen with VR is this.
Go crazy.
Hey! Aw, you're so cute! Oh! Hi, little trick! Oh! Hey, I have a stick now. Come here. You want the stick? Yeah, go get it. Oh, he actually gets it. Come on. Oh, you're so cute.
It makes you feel like you're pulling a string back.
Left. Check left.
Oh, yeah. Nice shot.
So kind of an interesting mix between animated content, live action content, and the other users in the room could actually see on a 2D screen what the VR viewer was going through, what it was experiencing. So it becomes more of a living room social experience, and PlayStation is doing that as well. I'm going to wrap up. I have one final video. What I started out with, again, social creatures. We want to share experiences. We want to see really realistic experiences, but we also want to touch stuff. We want to walk around. We want to deliver on the promise of the Matrix in VR. Well, there's a company called The Void. and this is what they're doing. There's multiple voice centers coming all over the world, and I'm proud to announce that will be making content. We will be bringing our cinematic content to these kind of experiences. So for me as a gamer and as a VR pioneer, that's really exciting. Now, where this technology is going to go in the next few years, we don't have all the answers. We are on a mission to explore. And I would love to hear, and over the past couple of days, I have been talking to a lot of makers here, a lot of new talent. I would love to hear what your ideas are and where you would want to take this. Our door is open, and we are looking for collaborations with all of you. So that is my presentation, and we now open the floor to Q&A.
Thank you, Avinash. So we have time for a very, very brief Q&A. I'll invite Bhardwaj to please just take the stage and go ahead with the Q&A.
So that was mind-blowing.
Thank you.
And my question is to you is actually a two-in-one question, after which we'll let the audience take some questions. One, what is the VR market in India like? And two, how do you envision people taking to VR out here as opposed to something that's just a cool thing you do on a weekend or something like that? Do you see it penetrating households the way, say, video games have now?
Two very good questions. What I see happening, what's interesting, after the past couple of days meeting people here, what I've seen is that the state of the market here is kind of where the European and the US market were roughly 18 months ago. The advertisers, the people that would pay for innovative content are now slowly getting to grips like, hey, this could be interesting. So now they're getting to the stage where, okay, let's experiment. Let's open up a couple of budgets and get new makers to explore this with us. And that's for us interesting because that gives us the Indian market in a situation that we can model what we've seen and learned in Europe and the US and hopefully use that knowledge to help the Indian market. Now, this moving to household technology, that really depends on applications. As long as the applications stay in the entertainment sector, it'll remain a gimmick. As soon as we get to applications that affect and improve everyday life, quality of life, and it becomes something that's not a new fad or something that is gimmicky or a hype, but something that you would use every day to communicate with your family across the world, or that you would use for your job to interact with your colleagues who are on a remote location, then it becomes something that will see mainstream adoption. And of course, the technology needs to be more affordable and content needs to be easier to make.
What would a VR headset cost right now in India?
Right now, if you go for a Google Cardboard, all you need is the cost of a mobile phone, and you can already experience low-quality VR. If you would go for a more high-end headset, you end up in the $400 to $600 range.
Any questions from the audience?
I always wanted to make films in VR, but I don't have in-hand practical experience making VR films and all that, but I did watch a few movies in the VR lounge, which I really liked. But the thing is that how to implement these things in like a small filmmaker like me.
What our main recommendation would be, you just need to get started making content with the simplest technology out there. You can buy a Gear VR for very little money, and even though the quality isn't professional high-level quality, it'll allow you to explore what's possible. It'll allow you to learn. And by the time you spend a couple of months doing that, and you've gotten to grips with, hey, I could do these kind of stories, do these type of experiences in VR, by that time, there's going to be new technologies available that will take care of a lot of the problems that we have now for you.
Yeah, one more thing, is there a technical question, Alan? If I want to move a VR camera, then I saw a few days ago the making of Bahubali, and the director was walking and the camera was falling, but when I looked down, it was like the trolley can be visible. Then I asked the technical, there was a technical producer over there in the VR lounge, and I asked him how to resolve it. Then they replied like that you have to roto every frame, like in the joining area and all that. So filmmakers like me, we used to avoid this kind of VFX like this so that production cost gets down. So that will be a very awkward for me.
So your question is, if you want to have technologies like moving cameras and all things that require right now a lot of manual.
Suppose if I want to make a video like that one for the Indian market to promote some state, like there is a trick called Sandakphu in West Bengal. Many of us doesn't know about it. It is the highest point of West Bengal, but you cannot go through without going through a jungle, which a car cannot go.
Helicopters and drones. I mean, you do want to apply technologies that will get you to those remote locations that are not available to the average consumer. But at the same time, right now, there are manual technologies to get rid of the camera technology so you don't have that in your shot. It's still a lot of manual processes.
Yeah.
Right now, I would say give it about 6 months, 9 months, and then you'll see a lot of cheaper technologies that will allow you to remove cameras, remove helicopters, and shoot in a different way that will allow you to have a nice immersive shot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Avinash. I think we've reached the end of the session. So thanks for the presentation, and thank you, and thanks, audience.